The brand new tank in World of Tanks is here, and it is a double-barreled pumper, the Double Tap TS54 in World of Tanks console. So let's have a look at what this tank is all about and find out whether or not it really is worth the inordinate amount of money that you do have to pay for it, considering it is 14,300 gold, which equates to approximately £40. So yeah, it's a crazy amount of money, or at least $50 for you to be able to pick this one up. So is it actually worth picking up in the game? We're going to answer that in today's video, but first let's have a look at what the tank is all about by going into some of the statistics and then running through the armor model and how you can actually take it out, because that's probably what you'll be wanting to do, as most of you probably won't end up picking this one up. But more importantly, what are the stats? So straight off the bat, you've got a 40 kilometers an hour top speed on this vehicle. You got 1740 hit points. You have a decent amount of view range when you're loading it up with advanced optics, which means that you can spot other people. And so we're running it with vertical stabilized vents and advanced optics. Now you could run it with some speed boost equipment, and on playing it I probably would actually swap out the ventilation just to have a little bit of extra speed, and I wouldn't use it with the traction system but instead the advanced powertrain, so that you can improve the horsepower, because the horsepower to weight ratio of this tank is definitely not the greatest at 12.36, which means you do feel a little bit sluggish getting up to top speed and stuff like that, which you definitely want to actually be able to overcome. But more importantly, this tank has 8 degrees of gun depression and relies upon its armor model. And because for the first time that I've ever done this, but we can actually use the mouse in the game. So I've grabbed my mouse so we can showcase the actual weak points in World of Tanks console, which should hopefully be able to help you out with where the positioning of where you want to pen this tank is when you see the turret. Because if you see the hull armor of this vehicle, which is this bit and the lower plate obviously here, then you can basically pen this thing every single time if you pen in through the upper plate, because it is just so weak. You have what, like 100 or not even 100, what the hell, only 100 millimeters of upper plate. So every single time you hit this tank in the hole, it basically pens. Unless, of course, you're aiming at a plate like this and there's a building in the way, and so it's at a ridiculous angle that you just bounce off of. But for the most part, if you're seeing it anywhere near frontally, you can pen it straight through either the lower plate or the upper plate. And in fact, you have a stronger lower plate than you do an upper plate, although the angle on that upper plate is slightly better. But either way, the armor, not very good when it comes to the hull armor. It does get a bit of space on the side, but it isn't covering the entirety of the side of the tank. It is only really covering the kind of tracks area, I guess. You can see them here. It doesn't cover the top of the vehicle, so this area above those. But either way, it is, yeah, not the greatest when it comes to hull armor, but overall it has some nice turret armor. But there are a few weak points that can be penned by most people if they're firing standard rounds, and if you're firing premium rounds, the turret becomes a hell of a lot weaker. So the key areas where you can actually pen is the right and left areas here. Now you see that there's these boxy areas on the left and right of the turret. These are penetratable and you can actually go straight through them, and it's somewhere where you can aim as an additional weak point to the cupola of the vehicle. And if you're seeing it like this and you're facing a tank in the game like this, if we go to the appearance so you can actually see what's going on, you want to be aiming for up here, because what happens is that if you are aiming for that kind of left-hand side of that kind of flat armor, if you do miss and it actually goes higher, you can hit the cupola, you can pen that. Or alternatively, you just got a bigger kind of area of armor that you can actually pen. Now, it's quite hard to see when it has got a load of sandbags that don't actually count as armor or anything. They just kind of get in the way of you visually being able to see a tank's weak point. But yeah, you want to be aiming to right here and obviously right here. Or alternatively, if you do see the hole, just shoot that. Side armor is garbage. You get penned every single time. This is a heavy tank, by the way, in name only, to be honest. The turret armor is absolutely atrocious as well, and the rear armor is garbage as well. So yeah, not the greatest in terms of its armor, but surely it makes up for it with its gun. Now yeah, No. The damage per minute of this vehicle, it has 2,657 damage per minute with a fully kitted out commander and all of the bonuses including ventilation. Yeah, 2,657. Now, in complete contrast, if you were to look at a tier 9 medium tank from, say, the British line, the Centurion line, if that makes sense, the 7/1, you'll see that it is way higher than this 2,600, and of course you have the opportunity to kind of consistently deal damage, whereas this one you can either fire both guns at the same time or fire them in a single shot kind of manner, but overall this tank doesn't particularly feel all too good, and so I would highly recommend that you guys really avoid buying this one out of the bat. I just think it's very expensive, and it also doesn't feel particularly great in the game. It's quite slow, it's sluggish, its armor doesn't work, its view range is decent, but the camo on this vehicle is not great either, so you get detected quite easily, 382 meters when you're not moving and 391 meters when you are moving, so basically atrocious. That's because it's a heavy tank, it doesn't get much of a bonus when it comes to the detectability. Now, being a heavy tank, that's why you get the reduced DPM over some of the mediums, but at the end of the day this is basically a heavy tank in all senses of the word, to be honest with you. So yeah, it is really annoying to actually come up against, mainly because it will deal a lot of damage in one go, but for the most part when you are playing this tank as the player who's jumping into it, yeah, you feel a little bit lackluster when you're dealing only 560 damage per shell, because you've only got 280 damage per like one of the shells that you fire, but obviously you have 2 shells that you can fire. Obviously you can then fire it in a single shot way, which is potentially useful, but for the most part not something that I necessarily pick every single time. It is nice to have the double shot when you feel like you're not going to get off both of the small ones within a decent amount of time. So yeah, just it's not got the nicest alpha. The penetration isn't insane. The premium penetration isn't amazing either. It is just not a tank that I feel like is super strong, and considering how much they're actually charging for it, it is, yeah, it's kind of mediocre. But that's a great thing in my eyes, because producing tanks that are super overpowered all the time is just horrific. We've seen it so much recently with Wargaming that this is a nice one. It's just a shame that they're charging so much for a tank that is kind of mediocre, and in general I just don't think that they should be charging, you know, £50 for one vehicle. And in fact it would be much better, because of the volume that World of Tanks console produced, that they would be looking at introducing kind of the same amount of vehicles but just charging less and making them more accessible for a lot more people. That would be my personal opinion. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. Obviously, if you're going to buy any of the bundles, please just buy the base version. It is not worth buying any of the top or the middle versions of the double tap TS4 54, because it's just even more expensive. The top version costing nearly £70 to be able to buy, or maybe not that much, but like £60 maybe to be able to purchase. So yeah, just keep in mind that this tank is stupidly expensive. You can buy a full game, a brand new game released this year, like as soon as it's released, by the way, for the same price as this vehicle. And let's jump into the gameplay to see whether or not it really is kind of stacking up in that regard. So, of course, the first game and the only game of this review, just to keep it short, concise, and kind of straight to the point, as we don't want to make them too long, is of course on Hidden Village. One of the maps that isn't particularly amazing for a tank like this, which needs to use gun depression to make the armor work and to be able to trade effectively. So yeah, not a great map for us to begin with, but hopefully we'll be able to still make it work. And well, I guess the fact it's on YouTube means that it somewhat worked in this game. But my main concern with Wargaming releasing tanks like this is not necessarily that it's a bad thing, but the fact that they're charging so much for it. And it really infuriates me, because of the fact that it just kind of cancels out the whole point in buying a premium tank to try it out and give it a go and that sort of thing. And the fact that it's so expensive for a tank like this it just puts people right off, and I definitely wouldn't be recommending it to anyone based on just the pure price point. It could be absolutely overpowered and I wouldn't recommend it to people, and then it could be like this and not particularly crazy bad, but nothing like insane either. And yeah, I still am definitely not going to recommend it to people. So it's kind of one of those things where I feel like they price people out of some of the tanks completely, and especially considering that they've put this at tier 9 based on the fact that I don't even know why they've put it at tier 9. It could quite easily have been a tier 8 vehicle, but Wargaming deciding that no, that's not what they want to do. They want to go for a tier 9 for some reason, unbeknownst to basically everyone else. But either way, you can see here the whole premise of this tank when you're fighting basically tier 9s and 10s is to deal your double shot of damage and then kind of pull back and kind of hide during that period where you're reloading. Or potentially when you are kind of reloading your shells, maybe you can swap to just a single shell to fire that off and then keep reloading the other one. And so, yeah, I mean, overall, tank is quite nice at being able to do consistent damage and feel like you are part of the action, but sometimes you just feel like you're not doing anything, like you're just kind of sat around, kind of waiting for the enemies to make a mistake and then capitalizing on it and then doing nothing for the rest of the time. Because if you poke with this tank, it's not like you can even try and attempt to bounce rounds in it, because most people will just go straight through you. And so that's the real problem, I think, is that there's nothing to do in that kind of middle portion when you are playing in this tank. So yeah, it just feels a little bit boring to play, to be honest, which is not what you want when you are paying, you know, £50. Even if a tank's terrible, something like a TOG 2, at least it's funny to play, at least it's interesting to try and play, whereas this tank is just not great and also not very fun at all either. So it's kind of like the worst combo. You have to pay a load of money and it's not that fun. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with how the tank actually plays. It's not very novel, it's not that unique. I would much rather be playing the 703-2 because, you know, at least you can bounce a few rounds in that vehicle as opposed to this one. Now we've swapped here to the single shot. That's because hopefully we can get off a couple rounds here, and you see in here we do decide to go for the double shot because I wasn't sure if he's going to try and hide. But now thinking about what we can do next is really, are we going to get a full penetrating shot? And then we find ourselves a nice little Tiger 2, and here you go, going for the tracking shot. Doesn't actually hit the track, it's fine. Maybe not the best of aims when I'm going for the tracking shot, but doesn't matter. Hopefully we can get one more into the Tiger. We do actually swap to just the single shot here because we're not fully reloaded and we wanted to get that damage. And then we've got the other one reloaded where we can put out another round, and then we are now reloading the right hand side and now. So yeah, and this is where the DPM can get a lot better, is when you're kind of using the double shot when you're not going to get one shot off, and then using the one shot when you are kind of going to be able to get both of them off, or whatever, when you can fire both at the same time, and then kind of re-track opponents, get a bit more assistance damage, that sort of thing. But now we have to push up if we want to get any more damage. Here we find ourselves a little UDES 14 who's out in the open. We hit him with one and then finish him off with the other, and you see that we're reloading our secondary barrel when we're actually firing the other one. So that's always nice about playing these double barreled vehicles, and what's kind of unique about them, slightly different to these standard vehicles in the game. But overall picked up 5.28k damage, which is definitely one of the higher games that we had in this tank. Played quite a few in it, considering that usually we play about 3 or 4 games. This one took maybe 6, something like that, to be able to get a decent replay, and it wasn't that crazy either. So yeah, it's definitely not the best tank, and you can see there we made 76,000 silver with a ×2 silver boost, I believe, on this one. So yeah, it's not the best at earning silver because it doesn't get any silver bonuses. And so overall, I want to say to you guys, please don't spend your money on this tank, especially if you're only going to be spending money during the Christmas period and you want to spend a little bit on the game to kind of suit your hobby. This definitely wouldn't be where I would spend my money, and in fact I'd wait until the bundles come out nearer Christmas to purchase multiple tanks for cheaper, and they're way better as well, which come in the form of the Crimson bundles and also some of the other bundles. I can't remember the name of them, but essentially including the Ragnarok, the Minotaur, the Hydra IS-6, and then you've got another bundle that comes with the Demolisher, the Carnarvon Eradicator, and then I can't remember. It's another vehicle. It will come to me at some point, but either way, you're better off buying a big bundle that's half price than buying this one at full price, and that's kind of my opinion on it. And I would really only buy this tank later on down the line if it was at 50% silver or 50% gold even. So yeah, hopefully that's given you an indication as to how this tank plays. Of course, if you want to check out update news and what's coming in the next few weeks, then I highly recommend you watch yesterday's video, which covers everything that you need to know about the Christmas period and the Christmas events on World of Tanks console. And hopefully you've enjoyed this one. It's a bit of a weird one. I thought I might enjoy this tank, but it was just kind of a bit boring and annoying to play. And I don't think it's too insane. I don't think it's too horrific. It's just meh, kind of boring. Yeah, it just wasn't a great fun tank to play. But either way, hopefully you enjoyed. Join me back in the videos coming soon, and I will see you there. Goodbye.